confident across, और you should know something यार, ये प्रॉब्लम स्टेटमेंट को तो मैं ही अच्छे से कर सकता हूँ। या कंपनी में काम कर रहा हूँ मैं, अगर सप्लाई चेन इंडस्ट्री में कोई सप्लाई चेन में कर रहा हूँ या कंज्यूमर स्पेस का मैं ये कर रहा हूँ, मुझे ये प्रॉब्लम स्टेटमेंट, इफ यू थिंक यू नो इट बेटर तो डू इट, जंप इनटू इट। ऑलवेज टेल अक्रॉस 2 मिनट के लिए इन्वेस्टर कौन से बिजनेस में है वो समझ लो। Have to go and meet at least 10-15 investors ताकि उसका सक्सेस रेट is about let's say 1 in 10 or 1 in 15 type का। Now people are asking यार मैं जो वो ढाबे पे रुका था ना उसके खाने में नमक ज्यादा था।
Hello and welcome to this new episode of Rising Through the Ranks podcast. In this episode, we have Mr. Manish Rathi, who's the co-founder and CEO of IntrCity. So IntrCity की बसेस आपने देखी ही होगी, उस पर ट्रैवल आपने किया ही होगा. So in this episode, we talk to him about how he built his business in the transport sector, जहाँ पे there is cutthroat competition, including from the likes of the government itself. Later, we also talked to him about why and how he raised funding from Omidyar and Nilekani. And finally, we also talked about profitability, how to achieve it, and how did he particularly did it. So stay tuned, watch the whole episode, and do let us know what your opinions are in the comment section below.
Manish, first I think we would like to touch upon this, right? Ki what was your career journey after graduating from VJTI like, and then you will transition later to your own business. But what has been your journey like in brief?
No, it's so my journey after I graduated. I just start after graduated. I graduated from VJTI in Mumbai. I did a bachelor's in industrial engineering and management. Now this was the time when computers had just started coming in India. It would be kept in one showroom, people not allowed to go over there, kind of a mechanism. And that was the time, and it was a part. But I came from an industrial engineering and manufacturing background, and then I got an opportunity to kind of go to US and do my masters. So I did my masters in industrial engineering. Now, of course, one thing which kind of in some sense for me worked out across is I always looked at what I liked at that time, at that moment of time, as compared to really thinking about saying that from a long-term point of view. So I went there over from an industrial engineering career, but suddenly, met few people or understood something and got interested in computer science, computers and, some programming languages, initial programming languages and all. And that made me kind of say that, okay, what the heck, let's just do another master's in computer science. So I did a master's in industrial engineering. I finished it off and I did another master's in computer science. And, that's how I got into computers, into the computer science program and understanding technology and all the software side of it, the programming side of it is what I understood. Then, of course, I got good opportunity to work at various different places. The labs, this was a research group, more specifically called as Belcore research group, and then started my journey on the startup side, and I started understanding what are the work culture, what is kind of thought about in a startup, how certain ideas are built up, how they succeed, how they fail, and so I moved from one startup to another till the time I landed on my last startup. Last startup was where it was more on the services side, but that's the startup we kind of got an experience to help out other startups. So got a wide, must have reached to my age of 40 at that time. Got some experience around in looking at different problem statements. But where I kind of got very interested across was that really a big problem statement consumer space. So for example, is there an idea which you can use technology and all technology data, and at that time when we started, mobile was just kind of picking it up, and two or three of them started. And if there is a problem statement, and then when we saw this market segment in India, which is really about people making a long distance journey, I think at that time 40, 50 million, just the number was about 40, 50 million people traveling every single day. 40, 50 million का जब number सुनते तो मुंह में थोड़ा सा पानी आ जाता है करने के, यार ये तो बहुत ही बढ़िया कुछ चीज है. So we thought about, at that time we thought that we could, if we can do anything to kind of get to these 40, 50 million people, maybe we can build up a business. But that was the starting assumption for us, and that's how my journey into kind of thankfully there were some people who kind of backed us up a little bit with the initial.
And Manish, back then specifically, when you saw this market and you were thinking, okay, I'll do a startup, like how did you a lot of people who are in jobs and wanting to go into doing their own business are afraid ki okay, the monthly paycheck won't come, how will I manage my finances if I leave my job? Coming back into the job industry might be harder because people will ask ki, what did you do for 1 or 2 years? So like how does one navigate that? Did you have your finances set before this, or like what was your plan?
No, it is, sooner you make this decision of moving into the, starting your business, better it is always.
Yeah.
Because as you start growing up, your responsibility starts increasing, you get married, have home, kids, all of that stuff starts. So yes, making a decision sooner is always a better thing if you have a curiosity, if that is the path. But let's take an example. In my case, thankfully I had a supportive infrastructure, and then just the itch was just too much. Each that I realized that if I can take this thing, if I can take this thing out, maybe things will work out. So that was the starting point. But to add across few things around, which I always thought, and definitely for me at my age it was kind of important, was that using the philosophy which I always use, that if I want to fail, I want to fail fast. कि मतलब वो 5-6 साल लगा के वो करने को उतना नहीं, तो हमेशा कुछ जो भी एकदम पीछे माइंडसेट में रहता है, यार इसको जल्दी से अगर पता चल जाए कि ये काम चल रहा है कि नहीं कर रहा है, जल्दी से चले जाए, don't kind of linger on it for a long period of time, and all of that stuff getting around. So to your question, I think each is very important. First of all, each is important, and that each should bother you.
Yeah. So this
bother you a little bit. Yeah, I wish I can do it, and you should be kind of confident across, or you should know something. यार ये problem statement को तो मैं ही अच्छे से कर सकता हूँ. There has to be some convincing factor in you कि ये problem statement को तो मेरे से अच्छा कोई नहीं कर सकता है. But that drive has to kind of come in around in that way.
Understood.
And the way you kind of do that across is, if they say, for example, once you are into a career, you start understanding different problems. Well, it could be a very simple, like for example, in my case, just understanding the consumer space, the changing behavior of the consumer. I give an example because at that time, Facebook was really kind of picking it up, and mobile was kind of building it up. Me and my partner and 2 or 3 really understood that the behavior of the consumers were really changing.
Okay.
In a sense that, I give this example. When I was a young kid, we used to travel by train. And हम लोग रेलवे स्टेशन पे जाकर बैठते थे ट्रेन के लिए, 2-3 घंटे लेट हो रही थी. But it was a gala time at railway station. Have fun, things across in that way. And once you kind of become older, you can't even wait for 5 minutes. Restlessness you can, and as a consumer, we become more restless. We wanted information in our hand, things like, and we understood that cycle, and that's why we saw that there is an opportunity across in that. So my submission here across, everybody will understand that there is certain needs which they will always learn through some experience which they have. ये एक need है, market में एक need है, और ये एक need छोटी नहीं है, ये massive need है, और उस massive need को मैं ही solve कर सकता हूँ, और मैं इसको अच्छे से करके दिखा सकता हूँ.
Got it.
So that mindset of कि ये अगर कोई problem है तो I will solve it first before anybody else, that is important.
First नहीं बोलूँगा, you will never be able to do it. मैं इसको और अच्छे से कर सकता हूँ.
Got it.
हाँ, better iteration. जैसे MySpace और Facebook का एग्जांपल बहुत नोन है कि MySpace was a social networking site, लेकिन मार्क ज़करबर्ग कंपनी ने Facebook बेटर बनाया, मोर व्हाटएवर, ज़्यादा फीचर्स, ज़्यादा एक्सेसिबल जो भी.
एंड सर, डज दिस ये यूजर को अच्छे से ज़्यादा समझने से आता है, या लाइक वेयर डू यू गेट दिस कॉन्फिडेंस कि मैं कर पाऊंगा ये प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व?
मैं जैसे it depends on the idea across that way. जैसे take an example, I know many successful startups, in the B2B space. Correct. अब वो B2B space में से उन्होंने शायद they must be working for a big FMCG companies, और उनको supply chain का कोई तो भी एक problem statement उनको ध्यान में आ गया कि यार इस problem statement को मैं technology से रखता तो मैं ऐसे solve करा. They start across. So somewhere across they already were swimming in an ocean when they figured out there's a better way to do certain things. Right? So many times you get that, and I think many times when I tell people, job is great, and I think it's not that I have very good. बट अगर आपको करते करते कुछ ऐसा साथ में आ गया, आपके बिजनेस में ध्यान में आ गया, मैं अगर मीडिया कंपनी में काम कर रहा हूँ, मैं अगर सप्लाई चेन इंडस्ट्री में कोई सप्लाई चेन में कर रहा हूँ, या कंज्यूमर स्पेस का मैं ये कर रहा हूँ, मुझे ये प्रॉब्लम स्टेटमेंट, इफ यू थिंक यू नो इट बेटर, डू इट, जंप इनटू इट. That's where you gain certain experience, you understand. Even we understood consumer space because we were helping out a lot of consumer-based companies, startups around it that way. कि वो लोग कैसे सोच रहे हैं. That's you take something from your previous life, and you kind of expand that into and solve it better. So to answer your question, it is not about being first, it is always about doing it better.
सर आपको द फर्स्ट फ्यू इयर्स में क्लाइंट फर्स्ट जो क्लाइंट्स होते हैं वो कहते हैं सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट है और सबसे मुश्किल होते हैं जानना कि उनको कन्विंस करना कि दे वर्क विद यू क्योंकि ऑब्वियसली योर कंपनी वुड हैव नो ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड एंड योर प्रोडक्ट वुड बी न्यू टू देम. तो हाउ डिड यू मनूवर दैट सिचुएशन, हाउ डिड यू गेट द फर्स्ट फ्यू क्लाइंट्स इन योर पोर्टफोलियो?
अब जैसे हमारा केस थोड़ा सा था कि वी हैड सम ऑफ आवर फेस वाइट बाय दैट टाइम, थोड़ा एक्सपीरियंस था थोड़ा सा ये करने के लिए. तो लोग जब हम बोलते थे कि देखो कंज्यूमर स्पेस, कंज्यूमर ऐसे थे, तो so interestingly the way it worked out across for us specifically around is that when we started this thing across is कि यार 40 million people को attract करना है एक platform पे, तो क्या करना चाहिए टाइप का. When we started with that, we said okay, let's do some, so when you do this kind of thing, you would know how to segment a market, how do you look at it, what is the piece, what is the low, वो बोलते हैं ना low hanging fruit क्या है, उसमें से कैसे ये करनी, ये थोड़ा सा है ना, once you get little bit of experience, you start understanding that. Right? The easier thing across is try to take across the low hanging fruit. The low hanging fruit was time में basically, at least I'm talking about now 10 years back, it was on the train side. तो train side में हमको देखा कि यार some personal experiences told us कि यहाँ पे information gap है. People require a lot of things and we understood that and we realized that कि अगर लोगों के अगर आप questions अगर कुछ answer करने चले, so for example even if you were to look at Facebook, they were answering certain curiosity of people. That's how it started, correct? So in a sense, we also started with that. Is there a curiosity of these people for which they would come to a platform and look for it? Then we realize, oh, there is something they want to know. Where they want to know the train location, or where they want to know things across the that. फिर उसको कैसे solve करें? So that's how we started, and we identified that let's solve this one small problem statement of these people, and then how to solve it is where we kind of went across. We started meeting people, things across is in that way. So we met with some really nice people from railways, and they said, and we told them this is how you should be looking at it, and they liked our background, we liked that across, and that's how it started for us specifically.
Product was basically an information product for people who are looking to book railway. Then how do you start scaling to now? Today, at least from what I see, it looks like a business where you have your own buses, where you have your own fleets. Like how did those product transitions happen over the years?
I always believed across in this peeling the onion theory.
Okay.
Correct. जब आप फील करते हो तो आपको नया कुछ डिस्कवर होते रहता है वगैरह करने के लिए, and you start realizing and start saying that यार ये वाला भी इसमें, जैसे for example we started, I take an example, we started with a very, let's start answering the question of the people who wanted to know the train location.
Correct.
And we went and started solving that problem, and by the time we realized that if I can answer this first question to the people, we realized there is a third question and the 10th question also to people. Correct. So you start realizing the feeling, and then you start building up your offering based on that. ये कैसे होते, ये technique कैसे बने, because you finally have to give a little bit of a comprehensive solution to the people. I can't just answer one question to the people and tell them बाकी 9 के लिए आप बाद में उधर जाओ. Correct. Yeah. They said, so for example, even in our rail yatri journey, it was not just about one question. It was answering multiple types of questions. Now, when we started looking at it from a journey point of view, like for example, train journey, because we said, then we again took, because yaar log train journey lete hai, but what happens of course if they don't get a confirmed ticket? What do they do? What do they do? Do they don't travel? चले जाते क्या करते? We realized no, they must be taking some other mode of transportation. Correct. And then what is it that, because I've now got that consumer's attention or that customer's attention, what is it can I? And that's how our bus also started. So I think as you start building it up and as you start scaling, start building it up, and that's how it kind of happened for us also.
And so Manish, coming on to this part where you are scaling your business, you have raised funding from Mirabilis, Omidyar, Nandan Nilekani's family fund, and so on. Of course, these are good names to raise funding from, and you have recently also announced a funding round, right? So, and of course, since you have your own fleet, etc., I assume that this fundraise was extremely important for your journey. How did you approach fundraise? Like, how did you approach these investors? Many new founders have these questions: do investors only work with you when you have numbers, or just is the pitch enough? Like, what was your first, brush with investors?
The first thing I always tell across is, किसी से काम करने से पहले उनका what works for them is to understand that is better. So first thing I always tell across is 2 minute के लिए investor कौन से business में है वो समझिए. Correct. Once you understand, if you start putting yourself in their shoes, you will start understanding, how to come and how to tell them and what story to tell them. things like that.
Yeah.
So investors, if I were to give a simple, they are simply going to like high net worth individuals जिनको बोलते होंगे यार तुम बैंक में पैसा रखा है तो 5% मिलता होगा, प्रॉपर्टी खरीदता होगा तो 10,000 मिलता होगा. Why don't you take some of your rich money out? तुम्हें 15-20% का रिटर्न. उस 15% का रिटर्न अगर मैं जो भी है 3-4 टाइम्स नॉट 15-20 3-4 टाइम्स का रिटर्न दे देता हूँ, बस उस रिटर्न में अगर मुझे रिटर्न्स में अगर मुझे कुछ मिल गया, I'll take my commission. That's as simple as that. So when they have taken money from somebody, it is up to them to figure out which is my best bet, because I have to go back and give that money back, these 3-4 times multiplier money.
Yeah.
Which is my best bet to kind of go across and give which idea will give me the best bet. It has got no emotions with an idea, to be very honest. Yes, they would have hypothesis, but वो hypothesis हवा के जैसे चेंज होते रहते हैं कि आज ये ऐसा ये है वो कल है, because finally they are only thinking about which one is the best idea which would give me the multiplier of the money which I have to do. So once you have that, now depending on the stage you are, any startup across is, if you are at a very early stage, people what the investors typically are looking across is not at ideas that much, but more at as individuals. Because they know ideas are simply at a seed level right now. उसका झाड़ निकलेगा नहीं निकलेगा पता नहीं अभी तक के करने के लिए. So they simply look at the founders में caliber क्या है. Now founders का caliber, if somebody is meeting it up, cannot just happen a judgment of the founders, or founders cannot happen in just one meeting. Right? The second thing across is in any part, especially in the investors part across, unless and until you are, and I'm making some exceptions here, but I'm talking about for 98% of the world, not the 2% of the world. मतलब उनके पास में इतना जीनियस आइडिया होगा कि वो जैसे इन्वेस्टर की जैसे मक्खियों के जैसे वही उड़ के आ जाएंगे. But I'm not talking about those 2%. Correct? So 2%, बाकी 98% को what they have to really do and meet up investors. Don't go with an intention of very first thing I need to raise capital. You need to go to them to go and tell your story. Just story बताना कि मैं ये करने की कोशिश ये कर रहा हूँ, मैं next 4 महीने में इसको यहाँ से यहाँ लेके जाऊँगा. Okay, 4 महीने में यहाँ से. Then you tell, if they say that to the investor, saying that मैं यहाँ से यहाँ लेके, if they have an input, the investor, because he's asking for free ideas, तो वो बोलेगा ठीक है एक काम कर लेना, 3 metric नहीं, 4 metric की तरफ जाना. Right? When you take that, you go back after 3-4 months again and say that, यार देख मैं last time 3 महीने पहले, I don't know whether you remember me or not, but I met you told me this thing and I came back across and did. तब उसको चमकेगा कि यार ये बंदा थोड़ा सा अलग है. Then again over it. So it is a dating kind of a period eventually, and when it, so a new investor, most of the investors, early stage investors I've seen across it, they simply look at the tenacity of the investor and is he growing every time he comes across and meets me.
Yeah.
Right? अगर उनको वो track record देखा, so then they know कि with proper money, with proper guidance, with proper team, this person can grow. So that's how in my opinion, it's got nothing to do with your ideas. Right? They have, it depends on how much money they have left in the bank, how much of the return they have to do, how fast they have to get across. वो सब factors consider करते हुए वो एक ideas पे पैसे डालते हैं, पैसे लगाते हैं. Right? So to do that, so that your idea fits into some criteria of an investor, right? It can't be just one meeting, one investor. Right? You have to go and meet at least 10-15 investors ताकि उसका success rate is about, let's say 1 in 10 or 1 in 15 type. Because the criteria of selecting a course is going to be different. Right? So you have to spread your hedges. You have to hedge yourself also. तो 15 में से कोई तो भी एक बोलेगा यार तू सही है करके. So you have to, as an investor, you as a founder, you have to make it as a part of your job. You go and knock at the door of the investors. Tell them I just need half an hour for a meeting. I'm telling you this is what I'm doing, and help him get him into his recall value over 5-6 months, so that when the time comes, he comes and that's how it starts. But then once you get the first investment and then the second investment, then your journey kind of becomes different and different. Why your first is on people. By the time you reach to A, or by the time you reach to A, you have to really show what the money which I took earlier has really borne some fruits, and people are now adopting some products. By the time you reach to B or C, you're showing good economics of the business, कि पैसा भी बन सकता है, वो बन सकता है. So फिर अगर जो आके आपके इसमें A में अगर इन्वेस्ट करेगा या जो B में इन्वेस्ट, उनकी सबकी क्राइटेरिया अलग अलग रहती है. A is looking out for more, etc. So you also need to know which investor to talk to at what stage of your company.
Got
वो
it.
भी एक important है कि हर एक का criteria अलग अलग है.
So, like, I think this was the most detailed step-to-step understanding of this we have gotten. So,
Exactly. Why did you choose to have your own fleet of vehicles more efficient? Yeah. Why did you make that decision?
थोड़ा फिर long answer है.
Okay.
But ठीक है, I give you across. See, when we were doing across our trains, right? When we were doing train, we were into 3 or 4 years of the train and putting across. So we figured out, some data told us that at least at least every single day in India, 10 lakh people, 10 lakh लोगों की train ticket confirm नहीं होती. The wait list. I'm assuming you are well aware of the wait listed concept, right? अब हम सोचते थे कि यार ये 10 लाख लोग करते क्या है, do they go back home, क्या करते, travel नहीं करते वगैरह. So we built up a prediction algorithm which told across people what are the chances of a train ticket getting confirmed, and if it had a low chance, we would tell them, why don't you buy a bus? Right? So, and we integrated with some open integration to your question across that way. Why did we do our own thing versus we did that first. We did that first. Open integration किया था. And what we realized that at that time when we started telling people, why don't you take a bus, there were very few people biting it. And we realized that people love the trains. Trains is a popular platform, like the trains, and there are plenty of barriers for them to go and say, I'll take a bus journey instead. And we realized that unless until those barriers are going to be there, this supply-demand mismatch across on the train side is always going to be there. Then and then we of course realized our data was telling us that the train inventory wasn't growing to the same level as, let's take an example, जैसे population grow कर रहा है या journey लोगों के travel grow कर रहा है. Government itself was making at that time making significant amount of investment on highway networks and this things around. The future definitely seemed across on the roadside, and we realized that something had to happen on the bus side. Now, for people to kind of go across and say that my train नहीं मैं bus लेता हूँ, they will need to see some parallels, some parallels. So in a sense that, okay, so what we started doing at that time was that we started saying, okay, how about if there is a bus which has very similar things as in trains. So for example, trains have flatbeds, our buses also have flatbeds. Trains have people like kind of, trains have a safety kind of a concept. You can go and sit at the railway station, wait for your trains. बस में तो क्या है, कोई पेट्रोल पंप के रास्ते के किनारे बाजू में वगैरह हो रहा है. So for many people, especially people with families, in रात को 10 बजे 11 बजे रास्ते के किनारे, is a breaking point. They wouldn't kind of like to kind of do that. So we started building up this concept called as lounges, where people can come sit, wait for their buses to do that. There was a third across which was a big break point, which was that people preferred trains because of washroom. Washroom, especially female travelers, senior citizens, things across. So we built up washrooms in our buses. There was a concept like train में at least PT है, कोई आपसे सुनता है करने के लिए, और एरो buses में कौन है, driver cleaner है करने के लिए. So we introduced this concept called as bus cab. So the idea was that once we started creating this similarity, people started saying that okay, ठीक है. Then the second across is we realized that there has to be a brand. Indian Railways is a brand which people relate to. They feel that there is a problem, they'll listen to you or something like that. In the buses at that time, there were none. State-wise, there were different people. It was a very super fragmented market. We realized that in India, there is a unique opportunity of creating a nationwide brand, which, today if you take a bus in Delhi or either you take a Mumbai, Chennai, anywhere, it will have the same standard look and feel, policies, things across, which we all have started expecting as consumers now. So standardization of services became a big thing, is becoming a big thing. So ये इसमें करते हुए हमने ये introduce किया कि trains and buses, it's the same consumer. Look, as I said, right, it's the same travel. The only thing is you might choose a train or you might choose a bus, or a flight or a car. But at least even a train on the bus side, there was an opportunity for us to create that parallel. So today, if you look at it, we are in trains also, and the buses is also what we have. And that's how both the offer.
Very interesting. So मतलब basic idea इसमें मतलब मुझे ये लगता है कि कोई भी अगर थर्ड पार्टी से खुद प्रोडक्शन थर्ड पार्टी के इंस्टेड ऑफ थर्ड पार्टी, इफ समवन वांट्स टू स्टार्ट देयर ओन प्रोडक्शन, मेन चीज है कि जो सिनर्जी है वो अपने को पता है कि क्या चीज कैसे बनेगी ताकि मेरा प्रोडक्ट और बेटर होते जाए. जस्ट टेकिंग एन एग्जांपल, इफ यू हैव योर बसेस इन योर कंट्रोल, आप कुछ भी उसमें न्यू टाइप का मॉडिफिकेशन कर सकते हो, लाइक यू एक्सप्लेन कि आपने बेड्स
थोड़ा सा यहाँ पे सॉरी जंप करूंगा. बसेस हमारी नहीं है.
Okay.
We don't own any buses, by the way. We only go to asset owners and say that, look, if you convert your buses in this corner, we believe that we know that there is going to be a demand for it.
Understood. So this seems, yeah, मेरे को like reminds me of WeWork, where they were transforming the assets that these guys had into a more beautiful, more a place where younger generations would like to come and work and spend time, spend most of their day. So similar,
हाँ,
this
मतलब
kind, yeah.
मैं बोलता हूँ कि हमारा बिजनेस है ना, मतलब वो कंपेयर करता हूँ, मतलब हमारे जब कंपेयर करता हूँ कि मूवी थिएटर्स और मल्टीप्लेक्स, राइट, पिक्चर तो सेम ही है, राइट, वो थिएटर में भी सेम देखते हैं, मल्टीप्लेक्स, हमारा मल्टीप्लेक्स मॉडल ज्यादा है एज कंपेयर टू थिएटर मॉडल.
Got
So
it.
it is more about driven across this thing. It's not just about travel. It is about what are the challenges people feel, when they are taking a journey, and if we could address that, if we could resolve that, then the journey can happen. So if you are going for a movie, it was not just about watching a movie. People probably wanted a little bit of an additional experience along with that.
And Manish,
So
this
that is what
experience,
we did.
this experience point is interesting because I think India now is at a place where people are looking for better experiences in everything, from like buying things where they want credit to now, even the bus ride, for example. So, what kind of audience does IntrCity cater to today? Do you think it's the more affluent class, or like where do you find the sweet spot?
No, our buses, if I look at it, if I tell across, see the challenge across in this business, मैंने थोड़ा सा भी अच्छा बोल दिया, तो लोगों को लगता है कि यार ये अमीरों के लिए.
Okay.
ऐसा नहीं. I think the thing about across is we of course cater to what I call across is the second AC or the third AC segment of the train. That's a segment we kind of. So अगर मैं बोलूँगा कि इधर buses are our buses, the best buses, no, then there are buses with leather seats and flat TVs, मगर उससे भी मिल जाए. Those are not our buses. Our buses are traditional Tata, and those things. That's where. The only thing what we did across was the experience kind of came across more in terms of how are you kind of solving the people's problem. Problem ऐसा था करने के लिए पहले कि यार वो बस वाला रास्ते में रोक देता था, लोगों को बोलता था जाओ go and help yourself out on the road.
And unhygienic also those places. I have traveled buses many times. Yeah.
अब किसी ने हमने ऐसा कोई बहुत बड़ा ये नहीं किया है, करने हमने सिर्फ एक प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व किया है कि now there is a way or there is a method कि यार there is a washroom, now you know where you would do it. Right? To solve these things across for a basic problem around in that way. We personally believe that this is where people will start saying ये expected है. Expected. I'll take an example. When you start solving people's problem, people will come to जैसे so for example, one of the things we realized across is that it's not just the bus. It's not just हमने washroom का problem solve किया होगा, हमने इसका problem, sitting का problem. धीरे-धीरे now people are asking कि यार मैं जो वो ढाबे पे रुका था ना उसके खाने में नमक ज़्यादा. We'll solve that problem also for you.
Okay.
Right? So people start looking at it across this कि नमक मैं तो कहाँ पे खाना खाऊंगा मैं ये. So once a solution starts solving that problem across, you can't do it everything on your own, but you start building it. कि अच्छा इस केस पे मैं एक check point लगाऊंगा, solve करूंगा, I'll address it at least. That's where the solution kind of comes from.
And Manish, just switching gears to the business, like you have turned profitable in FY23. What was the approach there, and what is your advice to founders, because now they face a environment both from investors and markets where they have to become profitable. That's the pressure, that's the point everybody's saying. So like, what is your advice to those people, and how did you do it in your own business?
Yeah, so first of all, it has to come from a mindset.
Okay.
It has to come from a mindset. Why are you doing a business? Why? Now, there are founders, and I think probably many of them have been very successful to also have kind of come across this, be it anything across this, I just want to build up a big business and scaling business. Correct? There are certain mindset who say कि यार business बनाना ठीक है, but अगर पैसा नहीं बना तो क्या मतलब है उस business? अगर पैसा नहीं बना तो that is the second mindset across the people. We come, of course, come from the later background. For us, it was very evident that we are not doing any magical in the industry because we know there were buses running even before we were born, right? So, what is the difference? I think the challenge in this industry, what we said is, can we do this business profitably? And that was the biggest each we had, is to demonstrate it across that we can do this business profitably. That is our part. So the second across was the mindset part. So yes, so I think mindset is kind of important. Mindset is important. We always thought, my founders, co-founders and all, always thought that the magic is in making this business profitable. That's where we will learn. Now, if you start with that mindset, what to do, what not to do, what kind of things across you have to do it across, how do you scale? Every scale has to have its own, scale followed in a scale. followed by good economics, figuring it out across it in that way. All that mindset kind of comes in around and that. So if your question was how did we kind of reach to that was really by driving towards the mindset part. कि हमको कंपनी हमको ऐसी बनानी है.
So every decision you put is on that metric कि यार पैसे बनेंगे कि नहीं इससे basically.
हाँ,
So
पैसे बनेंगे बिकॉज पैसे बनेंगे बट एटलीस्ट पैसे बनेंगे कि ऐसा नहीं कि पैसे होना चाहिए बट एटलीस्ट यू शुड नो अ पाथ दैट इससे बन जाएगा पैसा
हाँ.
इससे बनेगा you can't kind of throw money to find out if there is money in there.
There has to be a
You
path.
can't, हाँ, you can't just say कि मैं पैसे फेंकता हूँ तो शायद कुछ पैसा वापस आ जाएगा मेरे पास. You can't go across this in that way. So you have to kind of figure it out. They said, when we started across, we did not run it successfully. But we knew that, if I have to scale, if I do, this cost will keep coming down, this will keep coming down. The economies of scale will start playing a role across it. Technology will start giving us the benefit
Leverage.
across it.
Yeah.
That mindset was there to kind of reach it across it. So that mindset is important. I think, whether, it is perfectly fine to scale once you figured out what you want to do, that I know कि for example मैंने 100 रुपए डाला तो मुझे 105 रुपए तो मिल ही जाएंगे इससे करने के लिए तो मुझे वो पता है. So then you put 500 rupees also, right, in it? Right, but before you don't know if 100 rupees से 105 रुपए आएंगे कि नहीं आएंगे. Why go at 500 rupees in that business is the question we always ask.
Got it. Understood. So this in terms of any founder who's looking to fundraise, thinking about profitability, wanting to understand how to learn from customer pain points and build their products, I think this will be useful for them. We have a few rapid fire questions, one line answers, which is a simple fun thing.
The first question is what is the best part about your job or your position right now?
Ability to think at a big scale.
To change about being a founder.
Finding more and more time to keep working from where you started, right? Where I started versus across now what I have to do across is a different path. Okay. But ability to kind of go back to those days and do some drawing board thing and those things around is the one I'm at.
Can AI take over your role in a few years?
I doubt that because unless and until AI starts understanding the emotions and the sufferings and what people go through, especially in the context like India, across कि क्या dynamics वगैरह क्या है करने के लिए, this lived on that day itself. तो ऐसे मुझे today if I were to ask me across is for example that so for example I did my bachelor's in industrial engineering, right? And today I'm not even doing ABCD also.
Yeah.
So correct करने. Should I have started taking computer science first, वो वगैरह and started my career before? That's where I started my liking came into it, but you can't kind of calculate it across.
Last is what is one alternate career you could have gone for or you wanted to go for?
That has kind of changed again by a decade but today I would have loved to become a lawyer.
Okay.
Okay.
And why is that? Corporate lawyer or normal in the
Normal. I like to kind of analyze this, put forward an argument, things across it in that way, and I like their job. How do they prove that? How do they get to prove that the sun rises in the west and the sun sets in the east? And they can prove everything, right?
Yeah.
So that's so far. I also like to do that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Manish. This has been,
Thank you so much.
A lot of knowledge for us also to go back and think about. We both are also at positions where we are, of course, thinking about, doing something of our own at some point. And everybody actually in our, groups, this generation is full of people who want to do businesses on their own. So this is really, really helpful.
And that is, I think, because of the efforts of people like you, Manish, in just the generation above. Because if we don't see people who are doing it, we won't be able to visualize that is possible for everyone.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Yeah. And you explained, as Amit said, you explained all of the aspects of founding a company and managing a company from starting to right now very well and in a very deep way. Because we didn't think of something. I didn't think of something that you said that you thought of while changing things and while creating things. So we're very grateful that you you accepted our invitation.
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the podcast till the end.
If you have any questions or doubts for the guest, please let us know in the comments.
And if you think कि कोई question बहुत important है, do let us know ताकि we can focus more on that aspect next time.
और आप लोग थैंक यू मत कहिए,
इंस्टेंट 3 लोगों से शेयर करिए और उन तीनों से कहना कि और 3 लोगों से शेयर करें, दुनिया बदल जाएगी।